Now let's discuss how to insert UI elements into our scene and go about working with them. Let us start off with a button. Simply right-click anywhere in the scene hierarchy, hover on UI, then select Button. If you don't have the canvas and event system in the hierarchy, Unity will automatically create them for you, and the UI element should be placed as a child of the canvas. The button is a UI element that scales dynamically according to the rendering mode, which was discussed earlier. You can go to the Game tab to check the dynamic sizing of the button. If you hit play now, the button will already contain some standard functionality such as detecting mouse hovers and color changes when the UI element is pressed. Buttons require program functionality to maximize its capabilities. To achieve this, create a new script named Button Behavior. Now, copy the code as shown on the screen, then save the script. Basically, the function will show a debug message in the console which shows how many times the button has been clicked. Take note that the method must be declared public so the button component will be able to find the function later on. Now create an empty game object and attach the script. This will be the container from where we will call the function, as you will see in the next few slides. Find the button game object from the hierarchy and find the onClick property under its button component. This is the list of methods that the button will execute when it is pressed. Now click on the plus icon to add an entry to the button, wherein we can add an object to the list and select a function from it that we want to run. For this example, we will drag and drop our button manager game object to the non-object slot. The No function drop-down can now be clicked, so do that and hover on the button behavior script, then select the on-button press method that we just created. If you hit play and click on the button, you will notice a debug message from the bottom left of the screen. You can also see from the console tab the number of times you pressed the button. Unity's built-in text UI element is more than sufficient to get us started in designing a simple user interface. Text elements generally need a string to output it to the screen, and the dot-to-string method converts non-string data types so they can be printed out properly. To create a text UI element, simply right-click in the hierarchy view, hover on UI and select Text. A text game object should now be placed as a child of the canvas game object. Find its text component from the inspector view and look at its properties. If you notice, the text component contains various character properties, paragraph properties, and other useful options to take note of. The text property is the most important of all, since it contains a text box which lets you type in anything you want to show on the game screen. You can also change the font of the text by importing a font file to Unity, then dragging it from the project view to the font property of the text component. We can also modify the text property through code. This is one of the reasons why dynamic UI is important. We will now display the number of button clicks in the text UI, instead of outputting it in the console. To achieve this, we'll modify the code as shown on the screen. Let's discuss this in more depth. As you can see, we first added a namespace reference for modifying UI elements in Unity. This is seen by adding the Unity Engine UI namespace on line 4. Then, we created a public text variable named myText so we can reference the text object we created earlier and access its text component by using myText.text. We can now save our script, then inside the button manager game object, that myText property will appear from the button behavior script. Simply drag and drop the text game object and it will automatically reference the text component in that object. Hit play and click the button so you can see it in action. Sliders are typically used in things that has a minimum and maximum value pair, like audio volume or screen brightness. Simply right-click in the hierarchy view, hover on UI and select Slider to create the corresponding UI element. Checking the component from the inspector view is a list of options to customize the slider. It may seem too much at first, but you will understand it easily as you continue to use it on your projects. In the meantime, let's create a volume slider by customizing the slider object we just created. Take note of the value property as we will be utilizing that later on. Open the button behavior script and copy the code as shown in the image on the screen. Essentially, we simply added a public slider variable named mySlider, which will reference our slider component. Then, inside the update method, we'll constantly update the text UI element we previously created to display the current volume amount in the game screen. This is where the value property is utilized, because we accessed it through the mySlider reference. Save the script and head back to the Unity editor to compile the scripts. Now go to the slider component, check the whole numbers box, and set the max value property to 100. We can also change the color of the text to a shade of bright white so it's more visible. The next step is to find the button behavior component from the button manager game object and drag the slider object to the mySlider slot. Hit play and experiment by sliding the handle of the slider. You will notice that the text component updates as you slide the handle. You can experiment on the other properties of the slider to determine how each of them works. Here are the references for this lesson. Thank you for watching.